Yeah.
So
Bathrooms are another thing that I have a big question about with this. I would have liked to have seen a bathroom in this movie just to understand what's happening, you
what are
know?
you talking about? They stick their extremities out. You know where that guy sticks his arm out into the cold? They stick their extremities out into the cold and then just,
You know, just cut their butts
yeah,
off
exactly.
because it's frozen now.
Frostbite
And
butt
they can't sit.
is a badge of honor that everyone in the front section
Absolutely.
has.
It's like when they cut off their arms.
Oh, missed opportunity to say frostbutt.
Ah, frostbite.
Welcome back to the Great American Movie Review, where we review great South Korean movies.
My name is Mikiah.
And I'm Kyle. This is a movie of the week style podcast where we take turns picking films and we have a casual discussion about their context and quality. This week I've selected the 2013 Bong Joon-Ho sci-fi thriller Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer is based on the French graphic novel Le Transpersonnage, and it is set in a dystopian world where a train is unstoppably going through the entirety of the world around in a circle once every year. And there is a bit of drama between half of the train's population in the tail section and also the rest in the front section.
It's a classic story of the haves and the have-nots.
Yes, exactly.
And I
Or
thank you. I was gonna let you cover like anytime you want to say anything in French. You go for it.
okay, cool.
'Cause I'm not gonna get that.
Yes, I will. I will do that. The film came out to positive reviews in 2013 before releasing in the U.S. in 2014, with a budget of 39 million and taking home a total of 86 million worldwide. I do know that it only took home about like 4.5 million in the U.S. during its runtime there, so it had moderate success. It had pretty limited success with how many theaters were given the film in the U.S., but it had very successful runs in Korea and China.
Yeah, it tripled the money it made in the U.S. in just South Korea.
Yeah.
But Bong Joon-ho was an established director in South Korea at that point, whereas in the U.S. now he's very well known after Parasite, but before then, not so much.
Well, this was his first film, I believe, that made it to the U.S.
Yeah, this is his first English language film, as you said. So
Yeah.
yeah, Snowpiercer. So just some general thoughts before we go into it. Snowpiercer for me, this is my least favorite Bong Joon-ho film. After watching it again, I like it a lot more than I did before. But of the films of his that I've seen, which is a good amount of them, this is still my least favorite of his, but it is still good. Like, I appreciated a lot more this time that I didn't really the first time around. But yeah, it kind of. Why did you pick it for this week?
So I picked it because I really love this movie.
Oh
I love
yeah,
the themes. I love the setting. I love the characters in it, and I really love the attention to detail that Bong Joon Ho generally puts into his movies, and it's nice to see him like mold his own through the movies that he makes. The first one that I saw was The Host. Obviously, it's like
yeah.
one of the first that people see. I've only seen three of his movies: Parasite, The Host, and this.
Mm,
And I love this one the most, even though I consider Parasite to be the best, hands down. I think that's probably the best movie to come out of cinema in the last 15 years of the movies
oh wow, yeah.
I've seen. So, but I love this the most because it really scratches the itch of everything that I look for. One of my favorite movies of all time is Sunshine, another Chris Evans movie, but it's
Yeah.
Danny Boyle, and it's a movie about a group of scientists who are set to this or set on a course to the sun with a like satellite carrying a bomb to restart the sun because it's dying. So it's kind of a last ditch effort sort of sci-fi thriller that doesn't devolve into like people killing each other necessarily like we
Right.
often see in dystopian sci-fi movies. This kind of does that, but
It
it
does.
has a lot more to say than that, I would
Well, it's
say.
also the setting kind of demands that be the case for,
Right.
like there's no way to move through these tight environments, with like resistance without murder, unfortunately.
And
Um,
and something else I'll say about the movie is the graphic novel, which I've read the first book of because it's the one that basically covers the loose storyline of this movie. It's pretty close, roughly, even though it's 30 years removed from the. I think the Le Transpersonnage is
Came out in
early,
82.
yeah, 82, early 80s. So, and Bong Joon-Ho was introduced to it in the mid 2000s. So even then, it was 20 years removed, and it's also a French graphic novel. This is a South Korean director, and this is a South Korean director's take on Western civilization. So
Right.
it's very interesting commentary to be had.
I okay, when I say this is my least favorite, that's not even me bagging on the movie. Like I said, I liked it a lot better
Bong
this time.
Joon-ho only puts out bangers.
Right. I Every movie I've seen from him has been great. There are a couple that I think are not quite as great, and this is one of those. The other one is Okja, which I do like a little bit better than this, just because of its weirdness. um, but this one to me, I still think it's a very well made film. And I love his sensibilities in it specifically. I think that's what lifted it up a little bit more for me this time. What were those kind of very non-American filmmaking ideas in the presentation and the approach?
So are you saying that American sensibilities is a negative for this movie?
No, no, no. I'm not saying that's a negative. Okay, I guess we've seen so many of these types of stories told, you know, um, from Western perspectives. And this is still centralized around Western characters for the most part. It's a very diverse group of characters in here. But um, I like getting a different flavor from the filmmaker coming in with a different sensibility in terms of how he approaches filmmaking, because different countries and different filmmakers approach storytelling differently. I just like the different flavor that this has than other contemporary American films that are in a similar vein.
Sure, but I would consider this to be one of the few global movies to gross
True.
above like $50 million because
That's true
it was
too.
filmed in Czechoslovakia or Czechia. I think it was Czech Republic at the time, but it's almost entirely produced by South Korean companies. Yes, there are mostly Western actors. There are a few South Korean actors, including the one from the father from Parasite. There is, it was only distributed by an American company, and it has three American actors. But
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's definitely a global film. Like it's hard to place it as like belonging to a single country for sure. South Korean director.
I'd say South Korean made is a fair thing because production and direction.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just you have somebody like Chris Evans at the lead. He is the face of this movie. And you have people like Tilda Swinton, Ed Harris. Um, you have, why'd I forget his name from
John Hurt.
John Hurt. Yeah, John Hurt, who's obviously not American, but still a Western actor. And Jamie Bell. Those are all very prominent actors in the film. Those are kind of a lot of your main characters. You do get Kang Ho or Song Kang Ho, who is a frequent collaborator with Bong Joon-ho. And obviously, he was in Parasite as the father. He's just so good in everything, honestly. And then you
Yeah,
have his daughter.
he's really good in The Host as well.
Yes, and the host as well. Then you have Go A Sung, who's also worked with Bong Joon-ho in The Host once again,
Mhm.
as his daughter. Um,
So you even have Allison Pill, who is Kim from Scott Pilgrim
right.
versus the World.
Which I love it when Alison Pill doesn't show up in a lot of things. I don't know what her reasoning for that is at this point in time, but she was in a lot of things in the 2000s to the early 2010s, and then she just kind of, I don't know, maybe she had some life stuff. I didn't look into it, but
Yep, it happens.
I've always enjoyed Alison Pill though. So happy to see her here in like a smaller role.
But you have Romanian and also Bosnian actors as Franco the Elder and Franco the Younger, respectively, which I understand why they don't talk now because uh, it's possible that Bong Joon-ho, of course, doesn't speak Romanian or Bosnian, so probably doesn't want to translate that for them. But
Right.
it's just kind of funny to me it, the setting shows multiple nationalities, and also the running joke is anytime that Mason, Tilda Swinton's character, speaks, there needs to be multiple languages like Spanish and French immediately, just
Right.
like an airport setting, just immediately followed by another language. I just love that.
Right. Yeah, the multiculturalism in this movie, I think, is one of the more unique aspects of it, especially
And they
given
play
the
on it well.
contained setting. Yeah, with how contained everything is in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
which, getting more into just like now we're diving a little bit deeper into the film past our general thoughts at
Sure.
this point. But yeah, the train setting, I think, is so well realized in this, and that really is the highlight. For me, I still don't know how I feel about the whole concept, honestly. Like, I've never quite fully bought into it. I think the setup is a little weak for me here. Like, it's like, okay, global warming stuff. There was some sort of um gas element that they used to try to
CW7.
to counteract that, which ended up freezing the whole world over. And this one guy happened to be building a giant train to go around the world that then kind of served as a little bit of a Noah's Ark situation for the rest of humanity, whoever could get on, which is obviously not a lot. It's just still one train, you know?
Right.
So I don't, the concept alone might work for me better in a graphic novel than it does in a film, and I don't think it like sets it kind of just speeds through the setup of like the, you know, exposition there, which I guess is good. You know, I don't want it to be weighed down by the exposition, but it does leave me like being like, I don't know how much I buy this concept, just period. Which
Yeah.
just holds me back a little bit from it. But the actual train setting is so well realized, you know, within this context, from the people at the back of the train. And as you see them moving their way forward through the train, it's very cool.
I'll say this, the first half of the movie, when they're just trying to escape the tail end of the train and they make it to the water processing plant,
Yeah.
or water processing portion of the train, um is amazing. It's stellar stuff, and it does kind of like go to a weird side in the second half. That's what gets me. The plot kind of breaks apart in the second half, but man, the actual escape portion is what does it for me.
See, I actually kind of feel the opposite.
Really.
Like, okay, I love once it actually gets to the scene where he grabs the gun and he puts it up to his head and
A
he's like,
great
they have no
scene.
bullets. So
Great
good.
scene.
And that whole sequence is amazing where they're like, take the whole things and they're like pushing it through all of the doors so that they can wedge the doors open. That whole scene is incredible. Because it just kind of, I just want to highlight too, Chris Evans. I don't think I've ever liked Chris Evans more as a leading character in a film before.
Yeah.
I think he's actually giving a really strong performance here. It's got that kind of Captain America kind of mode, but way more serious. And because he can go goofy and charming, you know,
I would say
he's
Captain America only because he's the leader, and Chris
right.
Evans probably lends himself as an actor to being very good at a leading role, not just a leading role, but a role that leads.
Right.
But
But Captain
he's
America will still throw a joke out here and there. This character's dead serious.
well, he's been through a lot.
Yeah. He, not to get too far ahead, but he ate a
The
baby.
first 17 years on the first 17 years on Earth, he was probably hilarious, but the next 17 years not so much.
No, not so much at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he carries a lot of guilt, but then he also carries a lot of responsibility.
I'll say this, my biggest problem with the plot in and of itself is a big contingency on the plot is the protein bricks eventually become known to two people as being made out of crickets and like insects.
That was cockroaches.
Just insects, what roaches,
Well,
whatever.
either way, I don't have a weak stomach for things, but that is one scene that I remembered from this movie from the first time that I was like, I don't even want to look at that again. And then watching it this time, I was like, all over again. I
My
just hate
my
that.
thing is, if the man's surviving for a couple, at least a few months, starving and eating children, he's not gonna give a shit about cockroaches, especially if he's been living in this world for 17 years and has been desensitized to like illness and cockroaches and that kind of thing. And I finally figured out and learned why I know that I'm just weirded out by him being weirded out by that is because originally in the graphic novel, the first class, which is at the top front of the train, would eat like rabbits, rats, but also like the higher ups of the higher ups would eat like fruits and meats and that kind of thing, things that everyone thought were extinct. The people in second class would eat an artificial meat, and then the third class would eat literal shit from the second class.
Ew.
So, and that was what was originally in the tub before they edited out with CGI.
Oh. Yeah, it does look
So,
very CG when they look through that thing.
yep. It would make a lot more sense, but also I doubt that would have made it through American distribution. So
Yeah,
that's probably why
yeah,
it got cut
that's I mean
or dropped in a draft or something
that's
like that.
pretty disgusting. So
Yep.
uh, yeah, yeah, the one thing I never understand about the train is they kind of get to the middle section once they get past the water train, you know.
Right.
And they're like, look at all of these beds, you know. They kind of have one line that just says, "Oh, look at all these beds." And then it's like, okay, does everybody else live in the middle of the train then and kind of go to their different sections, because they go through every compartment and I'm like, I don't know where these people are sleeping,
Yeah, we don't
you
really
know?
know because we're shown the classroom, we're shown like the sauna, we're shown the place where people work, like a dentist and something like that. We're shown one person like cutting an apple or something in like what appears to be a private residence, but it's all just kind of thrown. We see a slaughterhouse, or rather like a chicken poultry slaughterhouse, but we're not actually shown where the chickens are farmed. So
Right.
what I would assume is they skip over it. So it's possible
Right.
that they just skip over it.
Yeah, I assume it's that middle section, but that just, I don't know. Like, I feel like if there's different classes within the train, which I do get that feeling about
I
that.
think there
Except
are, yeah.
in this, I get more like there's the back half of the train and then there's everybody else. You know, it doesn't feel like there's like a middle class
I think it's
in
more
it.
so, yeah. I think the middle class would essentially be the people who are charged with defending against the people at the tail section. So the
Yeah, like
people
the soldiers.
like the soldiers or the violinist who comes up to the front and then back to the classroom. That's who I would consider probably the second class. But also we see like the people at the very front are people that just party all the time, which I think is just commentary on Western civilization, especially like Roman civilization, where everyone at the top percent of people in the world were just hedonists.
Yeah, it's this movie. Part of my issue, which is why I don't quite love it, is it is very heavy-handed, and I also don't think it's really covering any new ground in any of these, you know, in what it's presenting.
Sure.
Uh, I think it's well presented, and I think the setting creates a lot of intrigue, but I don't really think that it's doing anything that kind of makes it stand out thematically from similar films. But I do kind of think that I like the ending scenario once he does get to the front, which we'll get to that. But
Yeah.
uh
I will say that it's that middle section where they get past the water plant. Uh, this is plot wise, not like commentary or like acting or anything wise. It's plot wise where they depart from the water plant and then go all the way, and then once they hit the front, then it picks back up for me.
right.
It just feels like a literal montage to get up to the front. Whereas the first 30 minutes, or the first hour rather, of the movie was character driven, and then the next hour is mostly just moving forward, literally.
Right. There's a lot of fascination with the actual constructs of the cars and like
Yes.
how they're ordered and everything, which is part of why I was like, you're spending a lot of time showing me the different cars, but I still don't quite understand how this works, how this society is able to function. I don't even know where they really sleep, you know. Um, because the one room that had other beds in it, that you had one, like I said, throwaway line about it, I was like, Right, but these are just kind of cots again, and I still don't. And nobody's there right now, So
Yeah, I would say that's a flaw as well because Franco the Elder, who is the crazy guy who after Franco the Younger dies, he's just chasing them like a typical slasher monster. But so like it takes him like 3 cars to get to them in some instances, but also they're going through like the double helix where Chris Evans and Franco the Elder are shooting at each other,
yeah,
and those look like dozens of cars away.
right.
Not only that, but it's probably like half a mile away. So I think the
That's
editing kind
true.
of yeah, I think the editing kind of lends it to that. It'd be me like writing for the movie if I were to say that of course there's beds, but I think it's just trying to hit the things that it needs to hit and not showing us what it doesn't want us to see because it'd be wasting time, especially given the way that the production was made,
Yeah.
which I can talk about eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, you are getting the stuff that you need to get for the themes. I guess if I found the themes specifically more compelling, then maybe I would give it more of a pass, but I was more interested in the world than the themes here. So
Yeah.
maybe I would have liked more spent on the world itself because that was the unique aspect here for me.
I'll tell you this, and I kind of agree. Typically, in movies like this, I'll go based off the writing and all that entails, including world building. And typically that's true, but I think the characters do enough for me that I kind of overlook it. I can bring up the fact that in the entire time that they are like doing the push to the front, which is probably a few days, they pass by so many milestones. They pass by like New Year's, and then immediately afterwards, it's the Revolt of the Seven where they left and that kind of thing. But it's also the plane that Namgung Minsu wanted to see, so that way he could justify that the ice is
Right.
melting, or the snow is melting rather, and that kind of thing. And there's just so many like points along the entire year's worth of train track that they see in the span of a few days. It's just
Yeah.
that's where it loses me. Or the fact
Yeah.
that during the main fight and the in the tunnel, it goes right beforehand. It goes through several like it runs into ice, so they're all bracing for impact, and it happens like 4 times, and then it never happens again through the entirety of the movie. So it pierces snow only 4 times in the span of 5 minutes. So that kind of thing gets me.
Right. And it almost gets derailed.
Yep.
I'm like, how long is this train actually going to run for?
Yeah.
The few times it actually hits snow in
it
this movie, it almost goes off
entire
the
entire
tracks.
carts come off the tracks and then come back on.
Right.
Yep.
I'm like, this thing is not a very good solution for this world situation at all. So,
Well, I don't think it needs to
but
be. I suspect because of the video that they go over, which of course could have been propaganda that could have been absolutely filmed after the events took place to
right.
get Wilford into a gigantic train that is unstoppable, nuclear powered, I guess would be how it would be powered. Um, but the what they're thinking was he was always going to do something like this. He just so happened to have the means at the time when a cataclysmic
Right.
ice age happened,
It was a coincidental arc. It wasn't an intentional arc.
which is probably more likely to have happened with like preppers and everything like that.
Right. Which kind of goes into his whole god complex though too.
Yeah,
Like I'm sure that feeds into that. I think that the Ed Harris character, I really like the approach, and I like that you don't see him until you do.
I've always loved that. It's like Jaws for me. You don't actually see the monster until things need to kick off.
Yeah.
I've always loved, and it's the same thing with like Marlon Brando in an Apocalypse Now. He's only in about 8 minutes of the movie, and yet he does a stellar performance. If you can get stellar performances out of 8 minutes of the movie, then just let directors and writers like
Yeah.
utilize their actors and then either kill them off or only show them when they need them.
Yeah.
Don't just have those actors throughout just because they're top billed actors. I've never understood that. That
Right.
doesn't help
That's
writing.
that's that's the kind of sensibility thing that is very not American studio system kind
Yep.
of sensibility. Like you get the whole Tilda Swinton character, who's very important and key early on in the movie, in the first half of it, really.
She's basically the second in command of the train, I
Right.
guess.
She comes down and she makes her statements and speeches, puts them in their place, and then goes back to her nice life.
Yep.
I love her shoe speech when she comes down and she's like, a shoe? You wouldn't wear a shoe as a hat. The guy's arm is outside the train just freezing.
Yep.
And because they take the children, and so it just, yeah, all these things just kind of line up for when they do the assault, because they have their daily rations that they bring out. But yeah, she comes out and yeah, that whole shoe speech is great. Tilda Swinton's great. Apparently this role was originally written for John C. Reilly.
That's what I read too. And they kept
Yeah.
in some of the things, like when the officer soldier guy hands the shoe to Tilda Swinton, he goes, "Here you are, sir," as like a
Right.
they kept the mannerisms as if it were meant for a man,
Right.
or John C. Reilly in that instance.
Right, they didn't change the dialogue around it.
Exactly.
All the time. They kind of left it in, which I like that.
I kind of want both versions now. I want both the Tilda Swinton and John C. Reilly version of this movie, where John C. Reilly is saying, I belong at the head. Or I belong on the head. You belong on the."
It is a different tone coming from John C. Reilly, but I'd
I don't
still
think it
buy
would work for this movie, but I'd want it so much.
I want to see it for sure.
Yeah.
But Tilda Swinton really owns every scene that she's in.
Mm-hmm.
She's always good. She just is. But and she frequently plays these oddballs and stuff. And this, she has like false teeth, which at one point
Which she
does
pulls
take
out for some
Yeah.
reason. I guess she's trying to seem more meek than she actually is, but
Yeah. But yeah, she has to have these false teeth, and she speaks in a very particular way.
yep.
And yeah, she's just perfect in the kind of role. And then eventually they kind of they capture her when they're going through, and because so you get, before they capture her, so you get that whole assault on the water section, basically.
Yeah.
Because they realize once they claim the water, they kind of have control of the ship, because everybody needs water, obviously.
Yep.
So that whole assault is, then there's a whole ton of guards, which this is one of the more unique scenes that can only be facilitated by a movie like this in the setting that it's in, because it's just wall to wall, like guards with axes when they walk through that door. Which the daughter of I forgot the character's name.
Namgung Minsu.
Yeah. When she, for some reason, she can always tell what's on the other side of the door. I don't fully understand that, but I'm like, okay, whatever. It's
So I kind
one
of
of those sci-fi
I kind of
things.
do. She's only lived on this train for her entire life. She would have
Right.
absolutely tuned out the sound of the train and the sound of the wind outside. So she has kind of animalistic hearing when it comes to what's beyond the door. It's not that she can sense exactly what's beyond the door, or she has like, I mean, the tail section's gotta smell like crap always. So if your only environment is that thing, you probably have your senses attuned to other things. So she can probably smell what's beyond the door. And if it's like 100 men, I can smell that.
Yeah. Bathrooms are another thing that I have a big question about with this. I would have liked to have seen a bathroom in this movie, just to understand what's happening.
What are you talking about? They stick their extremities out. You know where that guy sticks his arm out into the cold? They stick their extremities out into the cold and then just,
just cut their butts off.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's frozen now.
Frostbite butt
They can't
is
sit.
a badge of honor that everyone in the front section has.
It's like when they cut off their arms.
Oh, missed opportunity to say frostbutt.
Frostbite. But yeah, that whole scene is crazy. Because there's one part of my brain that's like, okay, this is a little bit too frantic in its editing. But on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know how you shoot this, with that many people. And I think that it works because it's just so crowded. And you have these two bodies of people just like going at each other, you know, with the tail enders and now these guards with Tilda Swinton standing behind them trying to like command things.
Something I
And
like
then
that they don't show in other movies is when sword fights occur, or this in this case they're going with hatchets and axes. When
pipes and
sword
whatever.
pipe or yeah, akin to like a
Blunt
pike or something like
instruments.
that. Yeah, when fights like that occur, they typically only last 1 to 3 moves
Right.
before a blow is struck. So I like that they're moving on very quickly. It's very Lord of the Rings. Sword fights don't last very long there. It lasts for about 5 seconds, and then one of the two people in the fight are dead. So
Right.
that's typically how it goes. So
Yeah, yeah. Because once you get stabbed, like your body just like seizes up. You
yeah,
know? So you're not gonna be like able to just like keep going stab after stab.
adrenaline only gets you so far if you
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, your nervous system will focus its energy now on the wound.
Yep.
So yeah. No, that's yeah, the all of the violence is very quick, very brutal.
Hmm.
And you do get the death of the
Edgar,
Jamie Bell character, Edgar.
who is named after Edgar Wright.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
that's why Gilliam was named after Terry Gilliam.
okay. Yeah, because yeah, Gilliam's like the tail end, like their kind of leader, and Chris Evans is really close with Gilliam and is the one communicating and facilitating these plans.
Hmm.
And Gilliam's kind of pushing him to be a leadership role, which gets explained more towards the end, like his exact motivations there, which you can take or leave depending on your perspective and how you
I
want to
would
go about it.
say it's absolutely true, except for the fact that Gilliam kind of lets him be free and lets him keep going, which is what Wilford doesn't want.
Right.
So I would say that they probably were akin to partners because there needs to be a mutual agreement of what happens in the tail section and the front section.
Right.
But then Gilliam just kind of gets fed up. So
Yeah. But yeah, then you have Edgar, who's kind of, dang it, what's Chris Evans' character's name?
Curtis.
Curtis. So Edgar is kind of Curtis's like right hand guy, and he like worships Curtis. And Curtis is very specific about like, do not put me on that pedestal. I don't deserve to be there. And you don't really know why. You just know he's carrying some sort of guilt. You don't know what it is.
Yeah, he says Gilliam says Edgar is very fond of you, and he says, well, if you knew who I was, he wouldn't be. Something
Right.
like that. So
Right. And rarely in a movie do you feel like by the time it gets to that point when the person has all this shame that like it necessarily is warranted. Like I understand the shame
yeah,
itself, but
typically in a movie, when he's talking to Gilliam about that in the first 5 minutes, Curtis would be like, well, if he knew that I killed his mother and tried to eat him as a baby, then yeah,
right.
they would
Like,
absolutely do that. And it's like,
or
okay, why bring that up now?
or not even that, it would be like later on it would be some other shame that he's holding that's like he just needs to let go of, you know, kind
Or
of thing.
Edgar would be on his deathbed and he would be telling him, by the way, I killed your mom, kind of thing.
Right, like maybe killing his mom, but almost eating him is a
Yeah,
whole
exactly.
other level. Like, oh man, no, that is, yeah, you would be feeling that kind of shame, and you would not want this person to idolize you. I almost ate you.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah,
I did what
yeah,
I
this
had to
movie,
do. You probably shouldn't.
yeah, but in that scene, it ends pretty much when they do get the upper hand, and he has an opportunity to capture Tilda Swinton or save Edgar, and he goes after Tilda Swinton, knowing that Edgar's going to die in that situation. Because, and it makes sense too for the trajectory of the film, because he does choose the greater good in that situation for what they needed to happen, over the life of an individual.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but yeah, that's where Edgar dies, and then also you get to move on. Now that's kind of the second half of the movie, is once they've captured Tilda Swinton and Chris Evans and
Can I make the point that you said greater good when involving a character
greater
named
good.
after Edgar Wright?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so, every time I hear somebody else say the term greater good, I always repeat it.
The greater good.
The greater good. um Yeah, so at this point you get the second half of the movie where Curtis and Octavia Spencer's character and a
Tanya.
few others, yeah, Tanya and a few others keep going. She goes with because her son was taken earlier in the
Timmy.
film. Yes, and the other guy whose arm was frozen off, he goes with because his son was taken.
Yeah.
And then you have the other guy who gets to throw knives and is cool. I don't know his name either, but
Yeah.
he goes
he's,
with.
Gray?
Yeah, he goes with because he's a good fighter. So those
It's played by Luke Pasqualino, which is
Yeah.
a fun name to say, if nothing else.
Yeah. But then yeah, it's pars down like the amount of people on screen at that point, which is good, I think.
Keeps it more
'cause
contained.
you couldn't keep having it be everybody.
Train pun.
And so at this point though, you get that one, what's the guy in the suit's name?
Oh, Franco the Elder? The guy
Franco
tracking
the
them down?
Elder.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy is crazy. He's just like, he doesn't look that intimidating, but when he's actually like fighting and stuff, he's just so cold-hearted, even to his like own guys. Anybody sees him do something that is
That's just
technically
people
wrong,
from Romania.
just
Method
but-
actor, as it
Yeah.
were.
But first you get, is it you get the fish car, which is neat. Like that's just a really
Oh,
cool
the aquarium
visual.
car? Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a really cool visual. And then the guy's serving up sushi, you know? And I actually, the sushi scene is really important to the themes of the film, specifically towards
Because
the end of it.
Mason is being made to eat the cockroach protein bar as well.
Well, that, and also she talks about the sushi and how it's only made a couple of times a year, you know, because you have to wait for the stuff to replenish.
Not because they have enough, but because it's a very
Yeah.
refined ecosystem that if one thing is depleted, then everything will falter. Kind of
Right,
thing, yeah.
which reflects, you know,
The train as a
exactly the
whole.
mentality of the train as a whole. So that's like a nice little encapsulation of that earlier in the film before they actually tell you what's going on. And then you get the school house scene with Alison Pill as the teacher.
She plays an
And-
insane character.
And, yeah, the song, what happens if the engine dies,
We
or
all
whatever,
freeze and die.
freeze and die. That song that she sings is so funny. That's where it gets into like the kind of satirical elements that I do really enjoy here too.
They can't feed the tail section with actual food, but they can give her an organ.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's pregnant, which isn't like a significant detail necessarily, but it's an interesting one to me where like there is still procreation and stuff happening because that has
In
to
the
be
front
something
section,
that's
but-
happening. In the front section though, typically,
Which I think is
like,
alluded to. I'm jumping ahead, but the fact
That's
that
fine.
the fact that is it Yuna? Yuna? The daughter of Minsu.
yeah.
So
believe.
she knew exactly where one of the where Timmy was. So my thought about that was because she was born on the train specifically to a front section family, was she also
Right.
like in that scenario?
Maybe.
Because when the children grow out of it, I assume, then again, it is a nuclear reactor. It's possible that they die from having worked in that space, but I assume when they grow out of it, they just kind of get reintegrated back in with the train society, but I don't know. Because she knew
Right,
exactly where to go.
Right,
So-
but none of the kids, because the back end provides a certain flow of children to be workers to keep the train
Mhm.
operating in a manual labor rather than, you know, using technology that can falter.
Maybe just
Um,
because she was from the front section, and maybe because she was the daughter of the engineer specifically,
Right.
that she would know kind of what's happening at the engine, I guess.
I think that's more so it, but I don't know.
This is just me
Because,
speculating because
there's
I
nobody
don't,
who's
I don't know.
like none of the kids grew up and then got returned back to the tail section because otherwise they would know
Correct.
what's happening with the kids. So either they kill the kids or the kids just die naturally doing what you know, working on that stuff.
Right.
Or because I don't think they'd integrate them into the front section people.
And their society essentially entails a caste system akin to India, where the untouchables at the bottom, the specific artisans are literally untouchable, where they are not to like be interacted with. It's kind of like that where, and no one can move from one cast to the next. So you're born into it and you stay there. So I assume it's something like this, where
Yeah.
even if you are a violinist who is brought up to the front section to be a servant, you are still a tail sectioner or something
Yeah.
like that. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, then so yeah, they get the classroom scene where everything just kind of goes crazy again because they bring out all
I
the
love
eggs.
Curtis's face every single time he's shot in that room. It's like, what the hell is going on here?
Right. There's some sort of familiarity to it, I'm sure, for him because he did grow up in the real world, and then also seeing just how distorted everything has become in this new context,
Yeah,
it would be highly disturbing, I
but
imagine.
also that scene is just it's Bong Joon-Ho, his entire perspective on Western civilization,
Right,
specifically the
right,
American school system.
right. Absolutely. And that's where like those kind of dark satirical elements kind of show their head
Yeah,
in the film here and there. And that scene I think is the prime example of that. But then yeah, they bring out all the eggs, and Chris Evans has been getting these little clues throughout the movie, like given to him in these little
he got
red slips
Nom
of
the first
papers.
time, Water the second time, and an accidental when he went up to the protein block manufacturing plant, and then this time he's given blood.
Yeah, and then once the egg people go through and keep going through,
The
they're
Eggman,
like,
I believe, is what he's credited with.
yes,
The
yes,
bald
he's
guy,
called the Eggman. Yeah, or Egghead.
Egghead. Yeah,
Egghead. Because he goes out and he's like giving eggs to all of the back end people who
mm-hmm.
are just waiting for the rest of them to like take over the train. And then he's like, and you know what else? They're like, I thought chickens were extinct. He's like, there's a lot of things that people thought were extinct.
Yeah,
And then he
rumored to be
like pulls out
extinct.
a gun and just starts gunning him down.
Yeah.
And then guns start getting pulled out in the classroom. Alison Pill's character pulls out a gun, starts shooting. She gets a knife to the throat and dies.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just like that's a crazy scene, and then
Yep.
just kind of kicks off the rest of the movie because then you get, I'm just gonna call him Gray Suit Guy because I keep forgetting his name.
Franco the Elder.
Franco the Elder.
Gray suit
Franco
guy
the
works.
Elder.
I mean, I'm not going to confuse anything
Yeah,
else with it.
I love how after the second half how diverse all of these settings are within the train. Despite the singular location of everything, it has a very diverse look to it as they go through different train cars and
Yeah, like the
everything.
pool car where for some reason there are pools like inches above the rails.
Right. And specifically the kind of the sauna room,
Oh yeah.
which you just have a bunch of people, just a bunch of saunas, and Franco is there, and that's kind of where you get the main confrontation with the Franco character. Before that, you get the scene where they're shooting at each other across the windows, which is a scene that conceptually I like, but in execution I don't love it because a lot of
Yeah.
it is just like them like a shot of Chris Evans pointing a gun out the window,
Yep.
and then a shot of Franco pointing a gun at the window, and then just shooting at each
Yep.
other.
I could tell you exactly how that would go in real life. One person would shoot out the window and another person would be like, "Are you crazy? That's our only ammo."
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and the way it's edited too, I don't really love.
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's not a very dynamic action scene, despite the fact that I think it's a really interesting setup for an action scene. So that was probably just limitations of what they were able to do.
It's an interesting idea waiting for the helix of the train to then shoot at a person on the other side of the
Right.
train. In execution, that wow, is that stupid?
That's something that feels very graphic novel like,
Yeah.
and it doesn't quite translate to live action, I don't think. So,
I think
yeah.
if it were part of the graphic novel, so in the graphic novel, the closest that they get is the main character right before the engine shoots out the windows of the engine. We don't exactly know why, but leading to a couple of characters dying. So I think it's just an homage to shooting out the windows of the train, but in a kind of believable way.
Interesting.
shooting at somebody else across the train. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of a weird thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. I wish that, like, it's a really cool idea. I wish that it looked. I wish that the visuals of it matched how cool I think the idea is for the concept here. I'm okay with it taking a more graphic novel kind of approach to it, but the
Yeah.
filmmaking doesn't quite match that. So, but you get like a much better action sequence, I think, in that sauna room where you understand that they're like hiding in different like compartments, and he's just kind of shooting at the door. He even kills just like a random other passenger.
He kills a front ender, and then one of the soldiers is like, "You just killed a front ender," and then he shoots that guy, and the other guy's like, the other guy who he tries to shoot the other guy, and after the click, he goes, "I didn't see a thing."
Right. So I didn't see a thing.
Yeah.
Just moves on. And then of course it turns out that, you know, they were hiding in different compartments, and there's a pretty good action scene there where but pretty much all the characters die except for Curtis and
Yeah.
Yona and
Minsu.
yeah, I keep forgetting the
Namgun.
characters' names in this one. But you got me there.
Even if
Yeah.
you call them by their actors' names, I would understand.
Yeah, the song
I've seen this movie
Kang-ho
several
character.
times, so I know the
Yeah.
ins and outs.
So it's basically just the three of them after that point, because Tilda Swinton's character got executed by Curtis in the classroom scene.
Yep.
And
Very cathartic. It's like
yes.
Harry Potter killing Dolores Umbridge in the 5th movie, and man, that would have been so much fun. I hated
Yeah.
that character with a passion.
Yeah, she's definitely that kind
That's
of
how good the
character,
acting
so-
is. If I hate you more than your actor.
Right. Yeah, so and at that point then it's just them kind of working their way to the front of the train. They go through like the dance party car,
Yeah,
know,
the
club
hedonism car.
basically. Right. The first time I watched this, I missed the scene because it's so quick where they're like, "Oh, look at all the beds," you know? And I was thinking like, where are the beds? Do the children have to walk through the erotic dance club to get to the classroom
They have to
every
go
day?
through the sauna, the pool room. They have to go
Yeah, I'm like, how many cars do they have to walk through to get to the classroom? Why wouldn't the classroom be right next to the living arrangement? I was just like, I don't know what the arrangement of these things are. Maybe it is, but the movie doesn't really establish that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and then it's just getting to the front, and then there's a debate between opening the door because then he reveals
There's another
Mitsu-
door.
Yeah, that reveals that there's another door that he can blast open to go to the outside. The cradle stuff that was like the drug that he was getting as payment for opening the doors is actually an explosive.
He brings it up. Curtis specifically brings it up during his story between Edgar and Gilliam. But when Gilliam sacrifices his arm to satisfy the hunger of others, and then everyone starts doing that, and then a few months later is when Wilford's men come in with sustenance.
The protein blocks, yeah.
Yeah, that's and specifically, well, they get water too.
Yeah.
That's the circumstantial proof to me that Wilford and Gilliam absolutely had a partnership, because it's only after Gilliam becomes a pseudo messiah for them is when Wilford comes in, because he's satiated the hungers of the people rioting and cannibalizing each other. So that's what I suspect. It's not proof by any means, but it's just another like reason why I think that's possible.
Yeah, no, for sure. I feel like it's true, but at the end of it, otherwise it doesn't feel like it means anything.
Yeah.
You know? But it's a great monologue that Chris Evans delivers, you know, when he's talking about his past and that whole situation with Gilliam.
It's probably the best acting that Chris Evans has ever done, but then again, I haven't seen all of Chris Evans movies.
Honestly, like I mean, I've seen a number of his films, and I mean, this is one of his more serious roles, and he really does a good job. Like I said, still playing kind of in that Captain America ballpark, but with a much more serious, much more gravitas to the character.
Well, this was in between appearances of Captain America, so
right, it was
so much so that they had to cover up his arms because they wanted him to appear skinnier, and they did that with camera work as well.
Right, yeah, because you can't have jacked Captain America be the guy that lives in the back end of this thing.
Yeah.
I didn't see a gym car.
They skipped over it. The children had to walk through that to get to class.
Oh, okay, of course.
They would put in some reps in between periods of class.
Yeah, and so that's when the door finally opens, when because Minsu and Curtis are kind of at a head about what needs to happen right now,
Yeah.
and Curtis is like, we have to just take over the train so we can change things, and Minsu's like, we gotta just leave
Yeah,
because
we
I
can
think
just leave because the cold is getting less and less cold.
yeah, so it's melting out there, so it's probably not deadly to the extent that it was before,
Yeah.
so we can make a life for ourselves again. Um, And then the door opens and there's Ed Harris. And Ed Harris feels like the most obvious casting choice ever for this, but it works.
Yep.
Like the man behind the curtain, let's get Ed Harris to be that. Okay, cool. Makes sense. So you buy it pretty quickly, I think, just for that association, like that Truman Show kind of character that he plays sometimes.
Yeah, he's pulling the strings of everything.
Yeah, the behind the scenes guy, even in like Apollo 13, he's kind of the
Oh yeah,
behind the
he's
scenes
he's
guy.
mission control. Yeah.
That's his kind of role a lot of the times. So it works here though. Again, just kind of once again, you have to quickly establish this character and what he's like. And just having Ed Harris do his thing, I think, works for that. And then he presents the whole moral quandary of the movie, where yeah, the whole revolt situation that happens every few years is kind of an organized thing to happen to reduce the population so that they can keep this ecosystem. So every few years, he
So
and
that Gilliam doesn't.
Gilliam,
Yeah. So that Gilliam doesn't have
yeah,
to keep lopping off body parts to Chris Evans
right,
just every few years. Yeah.
right. That way they keep an ecosystem because they need the people in the back to supply them with children. So they need that to be populous
Just like the
enough.
people in the back need the people from the front to supply them with water and food.
Right. So that's just kind of the
Capitalism.
right. It's the whole capitalism metaphor. That's where it's so heavy-handed that like I'm like, okay. I've seen this before and I get it, but I do think that it's one
Well,
of
this has happened before in like the Stanford prison cell
right.
like experiment. This has happened
It's a
before in
yeah.
lesser, smaller sample size situations.
Yeah, it's once again, I think it's the premise as a whole that I still don't quite fully buy into the world that exists, but it's still a well done version of this kind of parabolic tale.
I suspect it's
Um
more because it's more believable in the graphic novel because that's CW7 was to block out the sun specifically for war reasons
mm,
to get a leg up on one's enemy. So it's
I
more
see.
believable for that than
Yeah.
for a few countries distributing it throughout the world kind of thing because that would take a lot. That would take a lot
Right.
of international foreign policy to have happen. But
It feels like a war situation would be the most logical outcome for like the world ending in this way than just like trying to find a
hell, the
solution.
Matrix does it that exact way. War.
Right. I mean that's typically how it is. This one being a a global warming counter
Oh,
initiative.
that was specifically Bong Joon-Ho. Bong Joon-Ho wanted because the urgency of climate change at the time. That's why
Right.
it came out in 2013, but it was set in 2014 that
Yeah.
CW7 was distributed.
Yeah,
That's
I never have any problem with somebody using global warming as their premise for a film. Go for it. That's a pressing issue. I understand it. But yeah, and this I just don't know if I quite buy into it. But that's kind of besides the point. Uh yeah, cuz I think that this is one of the most compelling like join me kind of speeches that a villain
oh
gives to
yeah.
your protagonist. Because I'm like, there's a big part of me that's like, yeah, I would absolutely buy it if this guy, based on his actions, as a character, because he does exist in this moral gray area, the way that he left Edgar earlier in the movie for the greater good of everybody, I could see this movie having an ending where he does replace Ed Harris's character and take over as the conductor for the train.
Not
But I
only that,
also
but
understand,
yeah, but Wilford
yeah,
as a character, like giving that speech, he absolutely believes in the things that he's saying.
right,
He's not just a sadist who keeps the train or the tail end of the train under like subjugation specifically for that. He believes that it's useful for getting the parts necessary in order to power the engine to keep it going. And he doesn't
right.
know that the cold is getting less and less cold each year. So all he knows is we got to keep going.
Right. And I also understand though the ultimate conclusion that he doesn't go that way. He doesn't take
Right.
over the train because the Ed Harris character, like he said, has never been to the back of the train. And even Gilliam, I think, let things go further than they normally would have let them go, because Gilliam's been living in the back and he understands those conditions, and Wilford does not understand how bad that those conditions are. And so the disparity and the depravity of, you know, the front end and the back end, you know, as much as you're trying to keep an ecosystem, it cannot maintain that way with people existing in those conditions for that long. So I understand why the ultimate conclusion would not be to join him, even though I do think he gives compelling reason for it.
A small nitpick I want to point out of what
Yeah.
people say about this movie is it's a nitpick that Wilford says you're the first person to walk from tail to front of the train, when that's not true about Claude, the assistant who goes to the tail end of the train to pick up Timmy and I think it's Andy. And then not only that, but Timmy and Andy came from the tail end of the train and are now working for the engine. So
That's true.
it was very clearly clunky dialogue, if you want to call it. Sure, it's more so just a saying because of the fact that that's the first revolutionary to make it to the front without just being walked there with guards, essentially.
Right, without permission, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's walking to the train. He's not being led there.
No.
So it's more of a metaphor type of thing. Is it a
Yeah.
nitpick? Yes, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. People found it way bigger of a deal than they should have.
Yeah, that's definitely a nitpick for sure. Yeah, and then so the end result is that the door does get blasted open after like a bunch of front enders come and like attack. And Song Kang-ho's character is like fighting him off on this little bridge above these weird gear things.
Yep.
And it's a cool visual. And then you got the Goe Sung character, and they get the thing lit and it explodes and the door blasts off. And it seems that Curtis and the Song Kang-ho character, they surround themselves around Timmy and Yona, and there's an explosion, and then
The train derails after
the train derails
after an avalanche hits it after the explosion.
Yeah, it's like, and those two characters probably died, but then Yona and Timmy leave the train and like start walking on the snow, and they see a polar bear, and the movie ends.
Yep.
And I wish that
It was 10 minutes longer where you see the polar bear just eat the two of them and then humanity's done.
it's like, I was like, they're gonna die. They're in the mountains.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these are children.
It was specifically shot in the Alps. As a man who's been to the Alps, without like a whole climate change event, it's cold. It's cold as hell. They're screwed.
Right. Right. I was like, they couldn't have like dropped him. Like the movie couldn't have like ended close to like a city, even if it's a frozen over wasteland of a city. At least then they'd have
the infrastructure from like 18 years. They'd have cans. They'd have
buildings to hide in,
Yeah.
They'd have potential, even if it was trees, even if it was like a forest that they were by, maybe I can buy that to some extent. But they're like on top of a mountain and it's completely frozen. I'm like, nah, they're not making it.
Humanity's
There's no
dead.
sequel. There's no sequel to this.
No.
So yeah, the ending kind of rubs me like, well, that was pointless a little bit, only because I was like, there's no way they can survive this, and I don't feel any hope from a polar bear. I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, that kind of covers the extent of the film. But
What's funny is I will now bring up the reason why it's all shot and cut in this way is the distribution company, specifically for the Americas, was the Weinstein Company.
Yeah.
And Harvey Weinstein wanted 25 minutes cut of the movie, including the fish gutting scene during the bridge scene, during the bridge scene. And he wanted a voiceover narration for both the intro and outro of the movie.
Yeah.
My question is, and after they had cut the 25 minutes, put the intro and outro voiceover, they screened it to people and it got low scores. Then they screened the director's cut to it and it got high scores. So, and he
Yeah, I
still
think
wanted all of
that's
it cut.
yeah. I mean, Weinstein
Is a
was
scumbag.
known as yeah, he's a obviously known scumbag,
Convicted scumbag.
convicted scumbag, rotting in prison scumbag. Harvey Weinstein was known
Not
even
able
back
to
then.
dispute us, scumbag.
Yeah, even back then he was known as Harvey Scissorhands for the way he would interfere with
Yeah.
productions and cut up things. I don't know how much of that made it in through the final product.
The final
because
product is Bong Joon-Ho in a 2014 interview said, "I'm glad that the director's cut made it to the theaters."
right,
Essentially,
okay.
paraphrase. But the cut that we saw was the director's cut.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's what I figured, honestly.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it doesn't have any of those things that you said. So
Mhm.
I know that there's a thing that I read where apparently the fish cutting scene that Weinstein wanted to cut, Bong Joon-ho told him that
His father was a fisherman, and I want to keep it in for as a
yeah,
tribute
and
to
then
him.
later
And he was like,
then later in an interview he was like, yeah, that was a complete lie.
not only that, he
Just-
he said, "quote That was a complete fucking lie. My dad was not a fisherman."
yeah. So yeah, good for him, honestly. Just like keep your integrity, do whatever you
If Bong
can.
Joon-ho can get a win and Harvey Weinstein can get a loss, then that's a good day.
Hey, absolutely.
That's a good
I'm all
day.
for that.
That's a good day.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I don't fully understand the fish gutting scene. It seems I don't know if they're just like trying to make the axes slicker.
The rumor, I couldn't find any facts on this, but I kind of get it. The rumor is that it's based on The Godfather. Sleeping
Okay.
with the fishes. He's sent
just
the
like
fish like a
an
Sicilian,
intimidation.
yeah, Sicilian intimidation tactic.
Okay. I can see that. That makes
Either
sense.
that, or
Yeah.
I've seen some people think that the fish blood was poison, which you've already got an axe, my dude.
Yeah, I don't know how much.
You don't need to. You don't need to do that. Poison typically takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, I see it more as the intimidation thing than as the
Intimidation, yeah.
poison thing. Yeah, that makes more sense to me. I think it's a cool thing. I'm like, oh, that's kind of messed up. Why are they cutting fish in front of them? But yeah, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about with the movie as a whole, or do you want to move into scoring?
No, not really, because
All
we're
right,
already an
well
hour
then,
in.
yeah, we'll go into scoring then. So as usual, our scoring system works where we rate things 0, 1, or 2, 0 being not good, 1 being good, and 2 being great. It's pretty vague. It's pretty broad. We like it that way because we're just trying to start a conversation. We're not trying to make the end all be all review score for this, but that's just the show's review. It doesn't reflect necessarily even our individual opinions about what a movie is, but that, yeah, to put it clumsily.
No, that was good.
All right. Well, and as usual, the first category is writing.
I'll let you start with this one if you want.
To me, writing is a 1. I think that it manages a lot of interesting stuff. There's some really good lines in here. I like when Gilliam, towards the beginning, when he's telling him that I can't be the leader, he's like, I'm just a shadow of my former shadow.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. There's like that monologue. There's a few different writing monologues, like the Tilda Swinton-Shu one, the Chris Evans ones later in the movie. I think that stuff like that is really good. I don't know conceptually, like I've talked about, if everything quite gels for me in the thematic areas of the writing, though. Like I think that the themes of it are a little too broad and a little bit too ham-fisted for me in the overall, which is why I wouldn't give it a 2, but I still think it's solid.
I think when it comes to the main theme, what I think of the main theme, especially for the first half of the movie and kind of reinforced in the second half of the movie, do you know the quote, "Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times"?
I'm not familiar with it.
So it's mostly just cut so that the first sentence, "hard times create strong men," is kind of a look at, in real life, look at war. War creates war heroes, and necessarily after war, there are leaders that were war heroes, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's more so a philosophical thing, but it is from a I believe a fictional book by G. Michael Hopf. But I think the important thing to look at that at is it is a fallacy. It's a survivorship bias, which we've talked about before.
Right.
So hard times creating strong men is not really true. What I would amend that to be is hard times leave strong men left because the weak men were killed off. That's what I would
Right.
consider it. So something like this, where the tail section only has people who are willing to fight and only has people who can make it to the front, is because all the weak people didn't make it through. And the same thing is with the front section. The reason why the tail section can absolutely overthrow the front section is because the front section has people who are not prepared for war.
Right.
So that's a theme that I really love, that is kind of discussed in this, but not explicitly discussed. That's something
Yeah.
that I like to see in movies, is something that makes you think and creates an open-ended discussion where it's almost more fun to talk about the movie than to actually watch the movie itself. That's my favorite kind of movie.
Yeah.
So I will agree that some of the plot points are lacking, but I can't take into account that there's a lot of the dialogue that I love in this movie, as well as I love the themes in this movie. Not only the contemporary commentary from Bong Joon-Ho on systems and classes and that kind of thing that I think should be talked about for real life, but I think it has something to say, and I think it says it pretty well. So I would
Well, if
honestly give it a 2.
all right, I'll go with you to a 2.
Yeah.
Usually I'm the one who's arguing for the higher score, so I'll go with you to the 2. And yeah, and I get what you're saying, and I like your thoughts there.
Yeah.
So I like what you got to say.
I think the themes overshadow the plot in a way that I kind of like for a movie like this,
Yeah,
is what I'll
yeah,
say.
especially something that is as appealing as it is in its construction, you know.
Right.
Okay, next section is world building. I think the uniqueness of it and the realization of the setting is what gets this to a positive for me. I do have all of those qualms that I brought up though in its presentation of the world, that I can't get it to a 2 personally. I feel pretty strongly about a 1.
I kind of agree. I don't really have any problems with the world building. I suspect it's because of the themes, like I said before, because the themes wrap around the world building quite a bit. But
Right.
and when it comes to the production sets and everything like that, I like them a lot. I kind of don't like a few of them. And like I said, the back half of the movie, where it's mostly the front section, doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I get that, including but not limited to the aquarium scene. Imagine real quick when they're going through the bridge fight and it hits one of the ice walls, what happens to the fish in that aquarium?
Yeah.
Not only that, what are the hedonists up to? Because they're going to get the brunt of that impact. Are they
Right.
are they kind of screwed there, or because they're on Cronol so much that they don't even care?
They don't even notice. Yeah, because they're just
I would have
drugged out.
loved a shot of, like, a slow motion shot of all the people partying in the tail section or in the front section, just like as they're falling back down to the floor of the train
Yeah.
after the impact.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't help but notice that there's a few problems with the world building when it comes to the plot and everything like that. But the themes still work for me. I think a positive is fair. I think a 1 is good.
Yeah. All right. Characters. Characters. I personally am at a 1 with characters here. Because like you said, the writing and everything, and it really serves the themes more than anything. I think that Curtis is a great character for Chris Evans to have in his repertoire, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Not only that, but it came from a South Korean director.
right,
Crazy to me.
right. Yeah, I think that there's a couple of other standout characters, like the Tilda Swinton character. I think Ed Harris,
Wilford is an
Wilford and
interesting
Gilliam.
character, to say the least.
Yeah, the Wilford and Gilliam characters
Even
are really
Claude,
interesting.
the assistant, is so weird.
Yeah, but then you get the guy with like knives, who his whole character is that he can fight and he's got knives.
And he's mute, so when he's got somebody in a stranglehold, he has a tattoo of surrender and then a tattoo of die. And then they're like, I guess we'll surrender. And then Mason's like, nope, don't surrender. And then he's like, oh, but he'd kill me. And then so Gray kills him.
Yeah.
He's the muscle.
Yeah, yeah. You get. I
So
mean,
is Franco the Elder, though.
I guess I think that the movie serves its thematic material more than it serves its characters ultimately. Um, Maybe you could sway me to a two on it.
I don't think I could
Potentially.
because originally when I saw this movie in the theaters, I didn't really think much of the characters. I didn't really.
Right.
I was the spectacle was more fun than the plot or the
Yeah.
characters at the
I
time.
think I think the characters are well characterized.
Yeah,
But I don't necessarily think that their characters are all that deep or fleshed out.
and the
Because
action is character driven,
yeah.
which I love to see. But it's
Right.
mostly character driven for two or three characters.
Yeah.
Nope, sorry. Min-Soo and Curtis is what I would
Yeah.
consider there.
Yeah, there's some good key characters that get good fleshing out, but overall, like I said, it's not as much.
It's a good. I'll go with the
Yeah,
one
I
on
would
that.
say it's good. Yeah, one. All right. Directing.
This one I'm not going
Like
to budge on.
you're like a solid two on this
I'm a
one.
solid two. I know it's probably one of his weaker ones, but Bong Joon-Ho has only put out well directed movies at the
Yes.
very least.
Yeah, I'll. You know what?
He's one of the best in the game.
I wrote down on my thing because I did it where I laid it out beforehand, directing one or two. So because I wrote it that way, we'll go to. Because I'm kind of torn. I think that there are some really great sequences and scenes that are really beautifully directed inside the confines of this setting and premise. You know, I think that I give an extra bonus to
Yeah,
those type of things.
He intentionally made his setting claustrophobic and limited his ability on purpose because he liked the story so much.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go. I'm with you with the two, honestly.
Yeah. I think when all is said and done, Bong Joon-Ho is like the only director that I trust with movies now. So yeah.
Like right now, he's like your guy.
Honestly,
completely.
yeah, kind of.
Let's see. Next category is acting. Acting, I feel like it's a strong one. I don't think anybody's like I said, I think that this might be my favorite Chris Evans performance, and he does a great job carrying the film. And the other actors, I think, are all.
What, you're telling me it's better than Fantastic Four: Silver Surfer?
Oh, no, I forgot about that one. Actually,
how dare you unseat that throne?
He combines all the powers. The end.
Well, he is in the movie called The Iceman and Playing It Cool.
Spoilers for Sunshine, but he does freeze to death.
He does freeze to death in Sunshine. he's cast type in a way.
He freezes in Captain America.
He freezes in Captain America. I didn't even think about that until just now.
Yeah, he gets frozen a lot.
Yep. So, he's so cool as Lucas Lee in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
And it's in the snow.
Oh my God, it is.
But to me, acting, it's a really strong one. I'm not going to try to push it to a 2 necessarily. I don't think it's there in terms of its acting, but I think for like the genre or material that they're working with, it's all good performances, and I think he does a really good job leading it. That's where I'm at. Do you want to try to sway me to a 2?
I kind of agree, but then I'm going to bring in the fact that they're all multilingual people. So not only did the actor who played Min-Soo had to come in and he had broken English, but also Bong Joon-Ho only knows so much English and had to work with both British actors and American actors for the first time.
Right. And it's primarily English language. Yeah,
Not only that, but he worked with people in the region, so the Bosnian and Romanian actors, as I said. And all the extras, I imagine, were from the region of Czechia. So
yeah, this is where we find the nuance between good and great.
Yeah,
you know, and I'm still thinking that like all of the performances here are good. I don't know if it's elevated by like the performance factor here that's really taking it to the next level. I think that they do add to it though. Like it's definitely part of the enjoyment there is in these performances, but. Yeah, I'm not trying to like be like anybody here deserves to be nominated for anything, you know?
No, and we've given great acting for things that wouldn't even make it close to an Academy Award nomination before. So
That's true. Yeah. Okay. Where are you at? Are you at one or two?
We can circle back to it because
Okay.
because
We'll come back to acting.
because I'm still at a two, but that could change.
You could. I'm fully willing to be swayed in certain areas. So, um, I don't really have anything negative to say about the acting. So you could convince me that it's great because of that too.
Fair.
But let's see. Visuals is the next category. Um, Visuals is another one that I'm kind of in between a one and a two on.
Really?
I think that the train cars itself are, no, I'm a two.
I was about to say because this even the CGI in the background, which hasn't aged all that well, but I think it's still
No.
better than $40 million budget movies of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because the diversity of the images, I love that the contrast between all of the very warm lighting inside the cars too versus the cold
Tail
lighting of
section.
the outside obvious.
And also the tail section versus the front section.
Right, they intentionally gave it like a bunch of like warm lighting. The lighting cues really add to the visual language.
Oh, this is the point where I bring up in I think it's Baron Dove Studio is where they built a scale replica, not scale replica, but just a replica of the train that is 100 meters long. So
Interesting.
really cool, isn't it?
That is cool. Yeah, I think I'm like I'm still a
I wish
soft.
I wish they had kept it as like a museum.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That would have been so cool.
I'm still a soft two on it just because I do think some of the visual elements, like of the CGI elements, don't really necessarily hold up, but none of it's really detracting either, honestly. Like it works.
It's played for background.
Story wise. Right. They're not like relying on it too heavily.
No.
Which is why I kind of give it a little bit more of a pass.
And also I think the tunnel sequence is well shot, and just the thing I will say, this is the negative that I thought of when watching this movie a few times, is the shaky cam in the first action sequences are rough. It's kind of that
Yes.
it's kind of that shaky sequence where it just goes left and right, to and fro.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing that I don't like, but I really love the it's almost like Ip Man or Old Boy, the way that it's shot, kind of the action, like homages to that. And I believe the director of Old Boy is a friend of Bong Joon-Ho. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but
I can't either, but I like his films. So I haven't seen Old Boy actually, but I have seen Sympathy. Yeah, Park Chan-wook. I have seen Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, which is the first one.
He was a producer for this movie, so it makes sense.
Yeah, no, I like Park Chan-wook's films,
Yep.
and I definitely see some of that flavor in those scenes. But yeah, that goes more into editing, I think. But yeah, I'm with you on two for visuals.
Oh, that's fair.
So
Yeah.
we can move to editing, which is the next category.
If we're putting the blame of the shaky cam and all that kind of thing and the weird editing choices on, and also, as you said before, the double helix gunfight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just a one is warranted for that then.
Yeah, I think editing's a one for me here. The sound design, on the other hand, is really great. Specifically with the way that it keeps the train kind of chugging along.
The train noise is always
always in there. It's kind of like what we talked about with Tokyo Godfathers, how like the sound of the city is just always present, and that's a big part of the movie. Kind of the same thing here.
Imagine the job of the sound mixer with a movie like this, where you have to constantly take into account action sequences with dialogue, with just background noise from other characters, and then you have to take into account also a train. That's insane.
Yeah.
But also I like the score in this.
Yeah, once again, it's actually Marco Beltrami, who we've talked about now 3 times. So, because he also did The Hurt Locker and what was the other one that he did that we talked about? Blade 2.
Oh, that's right. He did do Blade 2. So action.
I talked about Blade 2.
Action is his orientation for.
He does do a lot of action films. And like I said, then he works with James Mangold a lot. He kind of has this kind of quality to his like scores a lot of the time that I really like.
Works with the train though.
It works really well with the train. Like I said before, Marco Beltrami, he's not one of these like A-list composers that you like would know his name necessarily. But he does.
Sometimes that's a positive.
Right. He does do consistently solid work. Like he's had a few Academy Award nominations, and I think that he's a very strong composer, and I like it. I like his compositions.
Yep.
So this is a good one for him. It works well for the setting. Yeah, so sound is a 2 though. Let's see. Our genre category is our next category.
We went with dystopian sci-fi, so think of your Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys, Brazil, think of The Matrix, think of The Fifth Element, kind of, even though
Heck,
that's
I've
kind of
even
more
been
comic.
playing I've even been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake
Oh yeah.
lately. I mean, same thing. It's the haves and the have-nots. You got people living in slums and people living in towers up above. So, like, it's a very common thing that you see a
Ready
lot.
Player One, I would consider a dystopian
Ready
sci-fi.
Player,
Yeah.
100%. It's a commonly done thing.
Yep.
For me, within its genre, it's a 1. Because like I said, I really just don't think it's breaking any new ground. It's doing interesting stuff in its very contained version of this type of story, but I give that credit more to the setting itself. I think that the actual thematic material for me isn't elevating, you know, the the basic premise. I could tell you the basic premise and you're going to understand the thematic elements of this movie pretty well, honestly, because it's just not breaking any new ground here, and it doesn't leave me thinking a lot, personally, like comparatively to other similar type films, like even like a 12 Monkeys, like you said. I think that movie leaves my brain with more to chew on than this
I
one.
think if this exact same movie, but more to the age of the time, a few years after the graphic novel came out, I think this would easily be a 2, because in the mid 80s, this would be an insane discussion to be had. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think in mid 2010s, there's been so many influences before it. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think it's breaking new ground. It's piercing snow, sure, but it's not breaking new ground. Um, that isn't the themes of the storytelling. But yeah, I agree. When it comes to the actual like dystopian or sci-fi nature of the movie, it's been done before. It's still in the top half for me of the dystopian sci-fi movies I've seen. But yeah, a one is fine.
Yeah. Okay. Impact. Impact on this one.
It's going to be a little bit more peripheral. However, last week we did take into account just the American side of this, which I do have an
Yeah.
argument for as well.
I still think on the American side of it, it is a 1. For one, it was the movie that got Bong Joon-Ho in with Hollywood, like in the Hollywood sphere at that point, got him that kind of
Parasite wouldn't
attention.
be near as big if this movie didn't come out before it.
Right. And he also then he was able to make Okja, which was distributed by Netflix and had, once again, that's also a very global cast kind of situation. And also, there was a TV show that they made on this that went on network television.
True. Very
That
middling.
ran for a few seasons. Yeah, I
Very,
didn't hear
very
great
middling.
things about it, but it did get that, like, that show wouldn't exist if they didn't feel like this movie had some sort of popularity behind it, and it did get 2 or 3 seasons.
True.
So,
I think it's got like a third or fourth season coming up or something like that, but I only watched the first season, so I couldn't tell you much about that.
oh yeah, yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, I'm actually curious. Is it still running?
I think so.
It ran.
Oh, it ended in 2023.
Yeah, it
Oh,
had three
nope.
seasons.
Got a fourth season. Four seasons. It's there.
Oh, it
It
does.
does have a fourth season. It's hasn't
It,
come out yet, but it's slated on IMDb, which typically means that it's been renewed, but it's still in production probably.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's on TNT. We'll see if that happens or not. It might be one of those things that, like, if they were going to make it, maybe the strikes kind of derailed it. No pun intended. But who's to
That's
say?
that's fair, but this is a far cry from like 2007, which I think was the last writer's strike, which led to a bunch of TV shows getting canceled or being remarkably worse. Looking at you, heroes, um,
Yeah. No, for
because of the
sure.
writer's strike. When companies now can take their time, or they don't want to,
Yeah.
of course, but they can.
Also, the streaming era is a different animal. They're not making things like the things that are being made well in advance, and it takes a lot longer to do so. And they're producing so much more content that they had more padding.
And they're throwing away so many things after like 1 or 2 seasons that it's
Right.
tough to keep up.
Right. That's a whole other conversation. But
Yep.
the streaming stuff it's a nightmare world. But impact for me it's a 1 here, I think. I think that it manages that.
Yeah. I think if we were to take into account the entire, so a South Korean film made and doing so well in South Korea has never been done. So this broke new ground in South Korea and in China, but I wouldn't say that from an American point of view, it didn't really do that much until a few years later. So I think a 1 is fair because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It still had impact here though. If you bring up Snowpiercer, people generally have at least heard of it. So
not only that, it made twice, or it doubled its money based on video on demand just from the few months and a year after it came out. And I saw it in theaters, and it had a very limited scope because of Weinstein. It only opened in 300 theaters, and its max theater run was 356, which is low.
Yeah, that wasn't big. Technically, when Netflix put out Glass Onion, it hit like 600 something screens. It was only out for 1 week, but they still put it on more screens than this got.
Yeah.
So,
and I did look it up. Box Office Mojo, it made 4 point something billion on
billion?
million on 350. Man, that's the highest grossing movie ever made in
like,
300 theaters.
That's crazy.
No, but 4 point something million on 356 theaters at the max. I calculated that to be 12,000 and change per theater. So
yeah,
that's not bad.
Yeah, no, it's not bad based on the number of theaters that it was in.
Yeah.
It just didn't get the distribution that it kind of deserved.
If it was marketed well and if it had made more theaters, thank you, Weinstein, for that, I assume it would have made more money. So
yeah, all right. Do you want to circle back to acting now?
Yeah.
All right. I'm still at a 1 with it, a strong 1. You're at a 2, is what I understand.
Yep. I'm still at a 2 because of the fact that it's multicultural and multinational, and that's tough on its own, but it's also brand new people coming together and making this, which is kind of insane to me.
Yeah, I guess how much extra credit do you give a movie for that, you know?
Well, I was already at a strong 1 with the acting from the main characters of Mason, Curtis. Edgar does pretty well, even though it's a small character for only half the movie. And Minsu, sorry.
All right.
As well as Wilford.
I'll go to a 2, which puts this total at a 15 out of 20.
Yes, it does.
Which matches our original
Batman Begins,
one
right?
for Batman Begins. Yep.
Same as Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret as well.
Yep. So this is a solid one. Like I said, this might be the lowest rating I'd give a Bong Joon-Ho movie still. On my own page, I had a range of 12 to 14. So your love for this movie bumped it up to just one above my max.
Let me see what I had, because I also did it, but it was more of like a 2-minute thing. I had 17 out of 20.
Yeah.
Kind of met in the middle
so that
there.
Makes sense. Kind of met in the middle there. So, yeah. But yeah, that's a general discussion for us on Snowpiercer. 15 out of 20. It's really solid. If you've
It's not for everyone.
Parasite. Yeah. No, it's rated R. It's bloody. There's some disturbing content in there. But it's, if you like,
not just that, but people are probably not going to like the content that's there, regardless of the action and that kind of thing. So
the political kind of ideas and stuff too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But also the philosophical nature. People don't often go to the theaters to think about things. Some people go to escape, which I do from time to time. But if a movie can help me think about something, then I consider that a success. So
yeah, and this isn't this, as much as I was like, the themes aren't as strong as like the best of the genre to me, they're still well done. And in a sci-fi film, that a well done sci-fi film is still going to leave you thinking about things. That's why something like Gareth Edwards, the creator from just a couple months ago, like kind of fell flat for me because it didn't leave anything to really think about in that movie, you know.
I'm gonna also
So
point to Looper. I have some huge problems with that movie, but I left the theater thinking. Like I still think about like
yeah,
some of the themes of that movie.
I love Looper, but I get that, you know, it's another one. It's not quite for everybody, and there are some weird holes in it just because it's time travel stuff. So, but that's our general thoughts here on Snowpiercer. But that does it for this discussion this week.
What's up next?
Next week, all right. I'm just gonna let people in. Kyle, you told me that I pick too many movies that I like.
Yes, you do.
So I said, you know what? I'm going to pick a movie that I don't like for this next one, and I'm going to make it a Christmas movie once again. Um, and it's honestly, this is a pretty popular Christmas movie. It's well loved. There's a TV series now out. And that's had a couple of seasons, and it has multiple sequels. And we're going to be talking
A Medea
about
TV show? Oh no.
We're going to be talking about the Tim Allen film, The Santa Claus.
The original?
The original.
And I haven't seen that movie in a while.
Yeah, I don't like it. So, if anybody out there, well, most people like this movie, I think. So I'm still in contrarian opinion here on the overall. But yeah, if I covered what I think is a really great Christmas movie with Tokyo Godfathers, which I hadn't seen beforehand, but now I'm really glad I did, versus one that now I'm forcing myself to
I think
rewatch.
it was safe to say, from what I remember of the Santa Claus, I think it's safe to say it was going to be better.
That what was going to be better?
Tokyo Godfathers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm just... Santa Claus is one of those that I might end up watching in a given year anyway.
I'm surprised you didn't go all in and go with the Santa Claus 3, the Escape Clause.
Oh, no. I couldn't do that to myself. I really couldn't. I hate that movie. Like, I don't like the first Santa Claus, but it's ultimately fine. That movie I hate. And I will not make myself rewatch that. So
all right, next year.
Next,
I can't
hey,
wait.
if you pick that, I won't rewatch it, and I'll just talk about how much I remembered hating it from 15 years ago.
Very good. I'll go over it for about an hour and 30 and why I think it's an amazing. Maybe April 1st.
Underrated.
April 1st, we could talk about the Santa Claus 3.
Yeah, and I love Martin Short, but that just wasn't it. All right, well, that'll do it for this week on Great American Movie Review. Be sure to join us next week for the Santa Claus, if you feel like it. But also, if you prefer us in audio formats, we're available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And we also put out new release reviews. And yeah, that'll do it for this week on Great American Movie Review. We'll see you at the movies.